Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. We're here once again with the Greenskins, going to be taking Azag up against the Dark Elves, and not only the Dark Elves, but Morathi is making an appearance once again, so definitely in for a very fun battle. She's up in the air here on her Hellsteed, I guess it is, looking very, very cool. So let's go ahead and take a look at the army compositions. Azag's got Spirit Leech and Fate of Buna, nothing overly complicated with him. For an infantry line, we've got 3 units of Black Orcs with a front line of Night Goblins. All these Night Goblins have Fanatics except for the Regiment of Renown Warlord's Boys. We've also got the Unbreakable Fanatics 8-Peak Loonies here. We've also got the Broken Tusk Mob, Armor-piercing anti-large, of course, on these guys. They have heavier armor than your typical Orc Boar Boy Biggin, and also have the Encourage trait, very useful for all greenskin builds. We've got 2 units of just regular Gobbos out to the flanks to be meat shields. We've got the Moon Howlers and Forest Goblin Spider Riders hidden in the woods here. And we also got the Morgub's Mangy Marauders and Forest Goblin Spider Rider Archers Vanguard deployed up to do some early skirmishing. We've also got the Hammer of Gork here, Goblin Rocklobber. Of course, it applies that blind effect that we've seen several times before. Minus 26 melee attack, 27 melee defense, and minus 40% accuracy. It also does armor-piercing missiles, so pretty solid overall. For my opponent's build, you can see he's got 3 Dark Riders with repeater crossbows over here. His main line is 3 Black Art Corsairs with 2 Black Art of Nagarond, a War Hydra. Don't get to see these guys too often, looking very, very cool here in the center. We've also got 3 units of Dread Spears, 1 over on this flank, and the other 2 over on the opposite flank. And of course, Morathi herself. Looks like she's got her Doombolt item. She did not bring her other melee debuff item, or actually, yep, looks like she did, the Heartrender. So anytime she's in melee, it's going to give that minus 9 melee attack and defense in an area of effect, which is very strong. She's also got Doom and Darkness, Melkos Mystifying Miasma, and Power of Darkness for additional winds of magic. She's also got Soul Stealer to be able to potentially heal herself. And yeah, also got the Deadly Onslaught for some additional melee damage. So let's go ahead and kick the battle into full gear and watch as we get things underway. First things first, in the skirmish phase, we're going to get Azag up and over here to start casting that Spirit Leech on Morathi. I mean, she can heal herself, but she's going to have to use up her Winds of Magic to do so. So we want to start dropping that Spirit Leech early and often on Morathi as much as possible. We're also doing some early skirmishing down here. I see these 3 Dark Riders with repeater crossbows, and I'm pretty confident that we can beat them. I mean, even if you look at the Spider Rider Archers, they have 15 melee attack, 22 melee defense, which is, you know, less melee attack, but much better melee defense than these Dark Riders with repeated crossbows. And of course, they also have poison missiles and poison melee, so these Dark Riders are going to get poisoned here and going to get caught up by the Spider Rider Archers. Likewise, the Morgub's Mangy Marauders, of course, auto-pick in every matchup with AP missiles, very fast, and 60 unit models, much more than any other skirmish cav. They have great combat stats as well, being a Regiment of Renown. I mean, great for a Goblin Wolf Rider Archer. But we've also got the Moon Howlers Regiment of Renown, who their special trait is that they cause fear, which is going to be very useful in this particular situation, routing off these low-tier Dark Elf Cavalry. You can see these Dark Riders already, you know, they're afraid, they're poisoned, they're routed off now. So the Moon Howler is definitely aiding in getting these guys. They're just going to fleet right off the side here. So really nice value right out of the gates. Meanwhile, we've dropped a Fate of Buna on this Black Guard here, and my opponent's having to advance uphill because of my artillery advantage. A little bit of friendly fire there, looks like, from the Hammer of Gork, unfortunately, but we are going to be unleashing the Fanatics all across the line here, so you can see the Gobbos swinging their chains, going to be punching through this first line of Black Art Corsairs and then continuing on through. Not probably going to kill any unit models here, but just do some nice HP damage. You can see on that Dread Spear where we were able to catch with multiple Fanatics. We did quite a bit of damage, all things considered, about 30% HP damage at the end of the day. But yeah, you can see the Black Orcs moving up through the center there. My opponent's dropping an Overcast Doom and Darkness, which is going to lower the leadership of all the units in this pocket, and you can see several of the Gobbos immediately terror-routing away. Azag, Morathi tried to drop that Doom Bolt on him, but because Azag is so fast, he's able to dodge it relatively effectively. We've cleaned up all the Dark Riders with the repeater crossbows with my own superior light cavalry, so very good play for us there. Azag's just kind of standing around, dropping that Wog here as we clean up some of these Black Art Corsairs and so on. We've been focused on that Black Art of Nagrand with the Hammer of Gork, and it's been able to do pretty decent so far, 14 kills against an elite tier infantry and some nice HP damage. You can see we are also going to be breaking through over on this side. These Black Ark Corsairs just got run over by those fanatics and the Black Orcs here without putting up much of a fight. We're immediately going to turn our attention over this way and just rear charge on these Black Art of Nagrand here. You can see I had got my Orc Vorbiggins a little bit caught up in these Black Art, which is not the best, but I'm feeling fairly confident so far. You can see the balance of power is already quite well in my favor because we were able to deal with all those Dark Shards relatively early on, and these Black Art are now starting to take a ton of damage. They're just completely surrounded here by Black Orcs and Goblins, and just a really bad day for them all around. We're getting the Broken Tusk Mob here to come try and surround on the Hydra. Of course, they have anti-large, but my opponent very well played here, dropping another upgraded Doom and Darkness. It's probably going to be enough to terror out away this Broken Tusk Mob, even though they do have better leadership than most greenskin units. But we're just continuing to drop that Spirit Leech on Morathi. You can see she's running away from Azag. She does not want to fight Azag in melee, but she wants to keep that melee attack debuff as long as possible, so she's continuously diving in on those Black Orcs and so on. But she's getting very, very low at this point from the Spirit Leech, and honestly, if I were in Morathi's shoes, I would save and not worry about the Doom and Darkness too much, just because a lot of my forces at this point are immune to psychology, and just try and save your Wounds of Magic for a Soul Stealer. But you can see Fanatics coming through, just scything through some of those Black Art of Nagrand, very cost effective. Unfortunately did catch a few of those Black Orcs there, but you know, they probably deserved it in the end. But War Hydra doing pretty well, all things considered. It's been able to rack up 111 kills so far and still climbing. Another Doom Bolt going to be dropped from Morathi, not bothering to try and put it on Azag this time, just instead putting it directly on these Black Orcs. Dread Spears are holding relatively admirably here, but because the Black Orcs are immune to psychology, of course, they're not going to be susceptible to the terror of the War Hydra. And because Morathi's so low, the War Hydra has relatively poor leadership, so although I'm probably not going to be able to beat it in melee, the idea here is we just beat it on leadership damage. Melkos Mystifying Miasma being dropped, and Morathi desperately diving onto the ground here to try and escape Azag, but the Spirit Leeches are going to be enough to pretty much finish off her leadership at this point. She's wavering, routing, and now shattered for army losses, and that is going to be GG for the Dark Elves. So, very well played to my opponent. Hope you guys enjoyed watching that battle. It's a super fun game. We don't get to see Morathi too often, although I just showcased her the other day, but still fun to battle it out with her. We've got, yeah, very good battle. In terms of the army breakdown here, you can see in situations where I was able to get my Fanatics charges off appropriately, they got a lot of kills. These 8-peak loonies in particular, 97 kills. 36 on this Night Gobbo is pretty decent. Of course, the Black Orcs, you would expect them to do well here as long as they didn't get shot up too much, and they did for the most part. 82 on these guys, 43 mostly healthy here. But honestly, I think the biggest thing was winning the mobility advantage by taking out those Dark Riders early on. And this is the biggest issue, I think, for the Dark Elves against the Greenskins, is that the Greenskins have really good light cavalry, like probably the best light cavalry in the game. It's arguable that, you know, maybe the Wood Elves, because of Wild Riders and Sisters, have better, but honestly, the Greenskins have such a great variety of cheap, cost-effective, really excellent light cavalry. The only issue is they're relatively low leadership, but in a position like this where I was able to keep my opponent on the back hoof the whole time, you know, from the get-go in terms of the mobility engagement, we're able to just clean up relatively easily. I mean, Dark Riders with torpedo crossbows have really poor melee stats, so from there we're able to just kind of sit back and shoot at will and use these other units to kind of clean up routing units and so on. Of course, Azag himself, of course, Spirit Leeching Morathi continuously throughout the battle, also does a lot of leadership damage. And yeah, and then the Fanatics and the Black Orcs just cleaning things up in the main line. So very well played all around for my opponent. That War Hydra, man, 127 kills. May even be worth bringing 2 of these guys against the Greenskins. It's tough to say. I mean, if I had gone with a heavier missile build here, we could have punished that War Hydra pretty hard. But the Black Art of Nagrand, I mean, I'm not really sure what these guys are meant to counter here, because, I mean, the Greenskins will probably win the mobility advantage, but they don't really have a lot of great heavy cavalry, so I think it would have been better to maybe cut these guys down to Hargoneth Executioners, because you're going to be facing more of a heavy infantry. I think that's the more of the risk is the Black Orcs, for example. I mean, a Ragnarok Queen is relatively, you know, it is a risk for sure. They can bring some high armor monsters. Even the Broken Tusk Mob themselves have 90 armor, but honestly, if you use the magic, the Hydra, other things, you saw my opponent was able to deal with the Broken Tusk Mob without too much issue, so I do think you cut down the Black Art of Nagron to go with the Hargoneth Executioners, and let's actually just talk about that matchup a little bit more in depth here. So for the Dark Elves here, fighting the Greenskins, it's going to be pretty tough. I do think you go with a couple Hargoneth Executioners. 4 Dread Spears isn't a bad idea, just to kind of hold up some of the large units. Morathi can be pretty decent here. Let's see, with the guys my opponent brought, I would say Soul Stealer and Power of Darkness keep. Melkos, you know, it's debatable as whether or not you should bring this one. It's relatively cheap, so we can keep it. Pit of Shades can potentially be very good here if you're facing like a heavy Orc Infantry Death Star, but we'll go ahead and cut it for now. We'll cut Soul Blight, and honestly, the upgraded Doom and Darkness Terror Bombing with the War Hydra works relatively well, but at the same time, you know, because you're going to be facing Black Orcs, a lot of the time they're immune to Psychology, so I think you just cut the Doom and Darkness and don't worry about casting that. Just instead focus on keeping Morathi healthy with that Soul Stealer there. I'll bring the Hydra here, you know, we could maybe even go with the double Hydra, something like that, and then instead of going with the Dark Riders with repeater crossbows, you could maybe grab a couple of Cold One Chariots, maybe one Cold One Chariot, and then a couple of Dark Riders to support. The melee Dark Riders will trade much more cost effectively against the light cavalry of the Greenskins. That being said, I mean, if we go ahead and compare them 1-to-1 here to Spider Riders, so Spider Riders are 400 points, so they're 100 points cheaper, but they do have, I mean, obviously they have, let's see here, so the Spider Riders actually have better melee defense, worse melee attack. They are slower, but they have poison, they have better armor, less charge bonus though. So if you're able to get a clean charge onto the Spider Rider archers, I think the Dark Riders might win, although with the poison it's tough to say, because that poison's a really nasty little debuff. So you know, this is what I mean by the mobility advantages belongs to the Greenskins pretty severely in this matchup, and it's often the case I find with the Dark Elves. They are a very, very good faction, but just losing the mobility advantage to your opponent is always relatively rough. Maybe we could do something different here and bring Harpies instead. If we were to find another, you know, 100 or so points here, we could maybe make it work. We could always go through and cut something else here, like, you know, we could cut Foe Seeker. That brings us even that much closer, and then maybe we cut Melkos. Ooh, we're 26 points away. Oh man, so close at this point. Honestly, I'd probably cut this Doombolt item. That'll free up even more funds so that we can still grab this Melkos and so on. But something like this I think would be pretty solid. The Harpies, you know, they'll trade all right against the Light Cavalry, and they do give you another mobility option as well. It's up in the air, so, you know, you have protection from Morathi, and if you catch out Azag in the air with Morathi and the 2 Harpies, I think with the Soul Stealer and with Morathi's debuffs and buffs and everything, you could probably beat him in the air. Don't take that as Bible, but you know, it's a potential. I need to test it out a little bit for myself, but I'm just kind of spitballing a little bit here. But let me know what you guys think. What would you take as the Dark Elves versus the Greenskins? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I'm keeping it coming with more Total War Warhammer 2 content every single day, so stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time.